When we talk about love, we often speak of hearts, but the truth is love begins in the brain. What makes one partner more attentive, more giving, more attuned to pleasure? Neuroscience shows that sexual generosity isn't just about the body. It's about the chemistry of trust. When partners prioritize each other's pleasure, they're not only igniting passion, they're literally wiring their brains for deeper connection, loyalty, and love. When we think about intimacy, we tend to focus on the physical, the touch, the rhythm, the choreography of bodies moving together. But underneath all of that, something much more fascinating is happening. Inside the brain, deep in the limbic system, a cascade of chemicals begins to flow: dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, vasopressin. These are not just abstract molecules. They are the biological foundation of attachment, pleasure, and trust. They turn fleeting physical encounters into enduring emotional bonds. When a partner takes the time to focus on another's pleasure, the brain interprets that behavior as a signal of safety and commitment. Dopamine floods the reward centers, creating feelings of joy and anticipation. Oxytocin, often called the cuddle hormone, promotes relaxation and trust. These are the same chemicals that help mothers bond with infants, that cause us to feel calm when someone we love is near, that keep long-term partners drawn back to one another despite all of life's complexities. In the laboratory, we've watched how these brain regions light up when people think about or engage with someone they love. The ventral tegmental area, a central part of the brain's reward system, activates strongly, almost as if the person were receiving a powerful natural high. Acts of sexual generosity intensify this activation because they blend two primal drives: the pursuit of pleasure and the pursuit of connection. The result is not just satisfaction, but reinforcement. The brain learns that this person, this partner, is the source of deep gratification and emotional safety. In evolutionary terms, this makes perfect sense. Our ancestors, who were better at forming strong pair bonds, were more successful at raising offspring. Generosity and intimacy, caring for a partner's pleasure, wasn't just a moral virtue, it was a survival advantage. It built trust, cooperation, and long-term commitment, all of which were crucial for rearing children in a dangerous and uncertain world. The instinct to give, to please, to make one's partner feel good is deeply wired into us. It's nature's way of saying, this connection matters, protect it. Today, we can see how this ancient circuitry plays out in modern relationships. People who engage in generous, attentive intimacy tend to report higher levels of relationship satisfaction. They describe greater emotional closeness, better communication, and stronger trust. They also tend to experience less anxiety within the relationship. It's not just about technique or performance. It's about what the behavior represents psychologically. When someone is attentive to their partner's experience, it conveys empathy, attunement, and care. The body feels pleasure, yes, but the mind receives something even deeper: reassurance. Neuroscience also reveals an interesting asymmetry. Pleasure received and pleasure given activate overlapping but distinct brain regions. When we give pleasure, areas associated with empathy and reward light up simultaneously, suggesting that the brain experiences giving as inherently pleasurable. This is why generous lovers often describe a kind of mutual euphoria, a sense that their own joy is amplified through their partner's satisfaction. It's not a one-way act, it's a loop of reinforcement that strengthens the bond on both sides. This is also why purely physical attraction, without emotional resonance, tends to fade quickly. Dopamine spikes, but it doesn't sustain. Without oxytocin and trust, the brain doesn't form lasting associations. But when intimacy is grounded in generosity, when partners care about each other's internal worlds, the brain encodes that connection differently. It moves from transient pleasure to emotional memory. The body remembers. The mind returns. We often underestimate how profoundly biological love is. We imagine it as something mysterious, almost mystical, but it is also an intricate dance of neurochemistry. Each generous touch, each act of care, each moment of attentiveness rewires the brain ever so slightly, reinforcing patterns of attachment and security. Over time, those patterns become the scaffolding of long-term love. What's remarkable is that this isn't limited to the early stages of passion. Even in long-term relationships, when novelty has faded, acts of sexual generosity reignite the same reward pathways that fueled early infatuation. The difference is that now those pathways are layered with years of shared experience, memories, and trust. The pleasure becomes deeper, not necessarily more intense, but more meaningful. It's the difference between fireworks and a steady flame. One dazzles for a moment. The other sustains warmth over time. So when we talk about pleasure, we are really talking about something far greater than the body. We're talking about the biological choreography of love itself. Every generous act of intimacy becomes a message written in neurochemistry. You matter. You are safe. You are loved. And in a world where so much connection feels fleeting, that message is not just intimate, it's revolutionary. Would you like me to continue expanding key point 2 next, keeping this same tone and flow? Across the animal kingdom, reciprocity in mating and bonding behaviors is an ancient and universal pattern. It's not random, it's part of nature's design. When one partner invests effort and care in the other's pleasure or well-being, it signals trustworthiness and cooperation, qualities essential for survival. From an evolutionary standpoint, these behaviors served a critical function. They identified individuals who could form stable alliances, share resources, and nurture offspring together. The act of giving pleasure, then, is not simply about the moment. It's a display of reliability, empathy, and partnership. In many species, we see courtship rituals that involve mutual grooming, food sharing, or coordinated displays. These are not mere performances of attraction. They're exercises in trust. The same biological principles apply to humans. Our ancestors didn't just survive because they were strong or clever. They survived because they could bond, cooperate, and form enduring attachments. Sexual reciprocity, the instinct to both give and receive, was a biological mechanism that encouraged pair bonding and emotional investment. Imagine early humans in small, interdependent groups. Cooperation was not optional, it was essential. A partner who was generous, attentive, and responsive was far more likely to inspire loyalty and support. Those who were selfish or inattentive, by contrast, risked being abandoned or replaced. Over generations, natural selection favored individuals whose brains were wired to seek not only pleasure, but also the joy of mutual connection. The impulse to give became entwined with the impulse to love. Neuroscience and anthropology now confirm what instinct has long known. Reciprocity builds stability. When partners respond to each other's needs, both emotional and physical, the brain releases oxytocin and vasopressin, chemicals that strengthen attachment and trust. These neurochemicals don't discriminate between acts of kindness and acts of pleasure. They respond to the emotional meaning behind them. In this way, sexual reciprocity is part of a broader system of emotional exchange that underpins human bonding. But reciprocity doesn't mean equality in every moment. It means balance over time. Sometimes one partner gives more, sometimes the other does. What matters is the shared understanding that both are invested in the well-being of the relationship. It's a biological contract of care, a silent agreement written in hormones and reinforced through behavior. This rhythm of giving and receiving creates a stable emotional ecosystem where each person feels valued, desired, and secure. It's fascinating to realize that even our brains evolved to recognize reciprocity as a marker of safety. Studies show that when someone behaves generously, areas of the brain associated with trust and empathy activate, while stress-related regions quiet down. The body literally relaxes in response to generosity. It's as if the brain whispers, "You can rest here. You are with someone who gives back." This is not just emotional comfort. It's survival logic encoded in our DNA. Culturally, however, the story of reciprocity has often been distorted. In many societies, sexual scripts have emphasized performance over partnership, conquest over connection. This imbalance has left countless people feeling unseen, unheard, and unfulfilled. Yet beneath those cultural narratives, the biological truth remains unchanged. Humans are designed for mutuality. We thrive on shared pleasure, shared vulnerability, and shared trust. When intimacy becomes one-sided, it contradicts our evolutionary wiring. It feels wrong because, on a cellular level, it is wrong. Modern relationships give us the opportunity to reclaim that balance. As we move toward more egalitarian and emotionally intelligent partnerships, the idea of reciprocity and intimacy takes on renewed importance. It's no longer about roles or expectations. It's about resonance. When two people approach intimacy as a dialogue rather than a transaction, they activate ancient pathways in the brain that reinforce attachment and joy. In that moment, both become givers and receivers, creating a feedback loop of affection that strengthens the bond. This is one of the most powerful evolutionary advantages of our species, our capacity to link pleasure with empathy, desire with care. Other animals may mate for reproduction, but humans pair for meaning. We seek depth, trust, continuity. Sexual reciprocity is one of the ways we communicate that desire for mutual understanding. It's how we say, without words, "I see you. I value you. I want you to feel good here with me." And so, in every act of generosity, there is a trace of our evolutionary story. It is the echo of ancient partnerships that survived through cooperation, the whisper of shared fires in the dark. When we give to another in intimacy, we are not just participating in a personal moment. We are reenacting a pattern that has shaped human connection for thousands of generations. It's not simply about pleasure. It's about what pleasure means, the instinctive language of trust that has kept love alive across the ages. Emotional intelligence is the invisible current that runs beneath every great relationship. It's what allows us to read another person's moods, sense their needs, and respond with empathy instead of defensiveness. When we bring that same awareness into our intimate lives, something extraordinary happens. Physical connection becomes emotional conversation. Every gesture, every sigh, every pause turns into a kind of language. It's the art of attunement, the ability to feel, not just to act. At its core, emotional intelligence in intimacy is about presence. It's about being fully engaged, not distracted, not performing, but truly listening with the body and the heart. In a world saturated with noise and haste, presence is one of the rarest gifts we can give another person. And yet, in intimacy, it's also one of the most necessary. When a partner feels seen, truly seen, the body relaxes, the mind opens, and trust begins to deepen. That's when connection transcends the mechanics of touch and becomes something sacred, something deeply human. From a biological perspective, this state of mutual awareness is where our neural chemistry begins to synchronize. Mirror neurons, the brain's empathy cells, fire in harmony when two people are emotionally attuned. It's what allows us to feel another's joy as our own, or to sense when something is off even before words are spoken. During intimacy, this mirroring creates a feedback loop of emotion and sensation that can be more powerful than any physical technique. The brain interprets empathy as safety, and safety is the foundation of pleasure. Without it, even the most passionate experiences feel incomplete. Think about what happens when emotional intelligence is absent. The moment feels disconnected, mechanical, even lonely. The body may be close, but the minds are miles apart. When this happens repeatedly, it erodes trust and diminishes desire. That's because the human brain craves emotional coherence. We want our bodies and our hearts to speak the same language. When they do, intimacy becomes not just an act, but an experience of shared consciousness. Emotional intelligence also shapes how we navigate vulnerability. Intimacy is, by its very nature, an act of exposure, both physical and emotional. It requires courage to let someone see us without our defenses, to surrender control, to trust that our openness will be met with care. People with higher emotional intelligence recognize this vulnerability in their partners and respond to it with gentleness rather than judgment. They understand that pleasure is not only about stimulation, but about permission. Permission to feel safe, to explore, to let go. This kind of understanding doesn't emerge from instinct alone. It grows from curiosity and empathy. It's built in the quiet moments of communication, asking questions, noticing changes in tone, respecting boundaries, interpreting silence not as rejection, but as a request for patience. Emotional intelligence transforms intimacy from a performance into a dialogue. It teaches us that satisfaction is not found in perfection, but in connection. What's remarkable is that this capacity for attunement can be strengthened just like a muscle. Research shows that mindfulness and emotional awareness enhance our ability to sense others' emotional states. People who cultivate empathy through listening, reflection, or even eye contact develop deeper emotional sensitivity. In intimate relationships, this translates into greater satisfaction for both partners, not because of frequency or intensity, but because of meaning. When intimacy feels emotionally aligned, it resonates beyond the physical act itself. It lingers in memory. It colors affection. It builds the architecture of love. Emotional intelligence also helps us recover from conflict. Every couple faces moments of misunderstanding, but those who can regulate their emotions, who can pause, breathe, and listen, turn those moments into opportunities for growth. In intimacy, this means recognizing that tension or hesitation is not failure, but feedback. It's the body's way of saying, I need reassurance, or I'm not ready yet. Responding to those signals with empathy rather than frustration strengthens trust and keeps the emotional bond intact. When we understand this, we begin to see that intimacy is less about what we do and more about how we do it. The same act performed with emotional blindness can feel hollow, while the simplest gesture offered with awareness and care can move mountains within the heart. Emotional intelligence transforms physical pleasure into emotional nourishment. It turns fleeting desire into lasting connection. And that is the quiet miracle of attunement. Two minds, two hearts, two nervous systems, moving together in harmony. It's biology meeting consciousness. It's love becoming language. When we learn to feel as much as we touch, intimacy stops being something we do and becomes something we are. For centuries, cultures around the world have shaped our understanding of intimacy through myth, religion, and social custom. These narratives have told us what's acceptable, what's shameful, and what it means to love or be desired. But the truth is, many of these ideas were never about love itself. They were about control. They were built to regulate behavior, to assign roles, to define who should lead and who should follow. And in that process, something deeply human was lost. The recognition that intimacy is a shared language, not a performance of dominance or submission. When we study the evolution of human sexuality, we find that reciprocity and tenderness are ancient. Yet, cultural traditions have often framed male sexuality as conquest and female sexuality as compliance. This imbalance has distorted the way people experience and express affection. Men have been taught that giving is weakness, that power is in taking. Women have been taught that pleasure is indulgent, that modesty is virtue. But beneath these learned behaviors lies the same biological truth. Both partners are wired for connection, empathy, and mutual pleasure. It's fascinating and heartbreaking to see how these myths persist. They echo in language, in media, in the way people talk about desire. We still hear phrases that separate love from lust, or that treat emotional vulnerability as dangerous. We still live with the residue of the idea that intimacy is something to be earned or proven rather than something to be shared. But as we move deeper into understanding human relationships scientifically, those old myths start to crumble. We can now see in the data and in the brain scans that genuine connection thrives on equality, not hierarchy. When partners feel emotionally and physically safe, the brain releases oxytocin and endorphins that strengthen attachment and reduce stress. When they feel judged or objectified, those same chemical systems shut down. The difference between love that flourishes and love that fades often comes down to whether intimacy feels mutual or performative. In many ways, this is where modern culture is catching up to biology. As conversations around gender, consent, and emotional honesty evolve, we are beginning to recognize that sexual generosity isn't weakness. It's emotional intelligence in action. To care about a partner's pleasure, to ask questions, to listen, to slow down, these are not signs of uncertainty. They are signs of maturity, of confidence, of respect. They are expressions of a mind attuned to another's experience. What we're really witnessing is a cultural shift from performance to presence. For generations, intimacy was shaped by scripts, rules about who initiates, who leads, who follows. But the human body doesn't operate by those scripts. The body responds to authenticity. It knows when touch is offered with care or with ego. It knows when attention is given out of love or obligation. The nervous system can't be fooled. It responds to sincerity. When partners drop the cultural roles and meet each other as equals, the experience transforms. What once felt mechanical becomes profound. What once felt transactional becomes transcendent. This reframing doesn't only free individuals, it heals relationships. When people stop viewing intimacy through the lens of performance or expectation, they begin to experience as communication. They become curious again, willing to learn, to adapt, to grow together. That curiosity is the foundation of passion. It keeps relationships alive, not through novelty, but through discovery. Each partner becomes both student and teacher, and the relationship becomes a living dialogue rather than a static script. Of course, cultural myths don't disappear overnight. They live in us, in our beliefs, in our insecurities, in the ways we talk to ourselves about worthiness and desire. But awareness is the first revolution. When we question these old narratives, we reclaim something essential, the right to define intimacy on our own terms. We begin to see that love is not about fitting into a story someone else wrote centuries ago. It's about creating a new one together, one built on honesty, generosity, and respect. This is what modern science helps us understand so beautifully, that intimacy is not just a physical act or an emotional expression. It's a form of cooperation. It's two people working together to build safety, joy, and meaning. When we approach it with openness instead of fear, we tap into the oldest and most powerful instinct we have as a species, the drive to connect. The myths taught us to chase control. The science teaches us to seek connection, and that is where true pleasure and true love finally begins. Love is not a single moment or emotion. It's a living system, a feedback loop that thrives on reciprocity and reinforcement. Every act of tenderness strengthens it. Every small gesture of care feeds it. When partners engage in generous intimacy, when they give attention, comfort, and pleasure, they set this system into motion. The brain rewards those moments with dopamine, oxytocin, and other neurochemicals that create a sense of pleasure, attachment, and calm. That chemical response makes us want to repeat the behavior, which deepens the bond even more. In that way, love becomes self-sustaining. The more you give, the more you receive, the more you connect, the more connection you crave. It's a remarkable design. Nature didn't create love to be fleeting or fragile. It created it to endure. The brain evolved mechanism to keep partners attached long after the first spark fades. At the beginning of a relationship, the rush of dopamine creates infatuation, a kind of biological spotlight that makes one person seem extraordinary. But as the relationship matures, the chemistry changes. Dopamine doesn't vanish, it finds new rhythms. It combines with oxytocin and vasopressin to build calm, loyalty, and long-term trust. What was once excitement becomes comfort, and that comfort, when nurtured, becomes the foundation for lasting passion. Many people fear that love inevitably fades, but what actually fades is novelty, the brain's response to newness. Yet love, when it is generous and emotionally intelligent, doesn't depend on novelty. It depends on curiosity, on presence, on choosing to see your partner again and again through fresh eyes. The feedback loop of love is maintained through attention. When you show interest, when you listen, when you engage, you reignite the very circuits that lit up during the earliest days of infatuation. Neuroscience shows that even decades into a relationship, those same reward centers can activate when partners continue to invest emotionally and physically in each other. The chemistry of love doesn't disappear. It simply responds to how we nurture it. What's striking is how small actions can sustain this system. A kind word, an unexpected touch, a look of appreciation. All of these gestures trigger the brain's bonding mechanisms. When partners exchange acts of generosity, they build an invisible web of emotional safety. And that safety allows for deeper vulnerability, which in turn deepens desire. The loop continues, each cycle reinforcing the next. It's not dramatic or cinematic. It's steady, rhythmic, almost like breathing. Love persists not through grand declarations, but through everyday acts of giving. This feedback loop also helps explain why relationships that lack reciprocity often struggle. When generosity isn't returned, the system weakens. The brain's reward centers begin to associate the relationship with uncertainty or disappointment rather than pleasure and comfort. Over time, that imbalance can erode emotional safety, replacing connection with anxiety. But when reciprocity is restored, when both partners return to giving and receiving with openness, the chemistry recovers. The same neural pathways that once dimmed can light up again. Love, after all, is remarkably resilient when it's fed. At its heart, the feedback loop of love is about meaning. It's not only the exchange of pleasure, but the exchange of reassurance. You matter to me. I see you. I choose you. That message, when consistently reinforced, becomes a kind of emotional oxygen. It sustains the relationship even through hardship. Couples who continue to express gratitude, affection, and curiosity maintain higher relationship satisfaction over time because their brains remain in synchrony. Their emotional rhythms stay aligned. They don't merely coexist, they resonate. It's also worth noting that the loop doesn't depend on perfection. Every long-term relationship faces moments of frustration or distance. But when partners understand that love is a process rather than a possession, they can weather those moments with grace. They recognize that intimacy, like any living thing, requires care. If it's neglected, it falters. If it's nurtured, it grows stronger. That understanding turns conflict into opportunity. It becomes a signal to reconnect, to restore the loop. In this way, love reveals its most profound truth. It's both biology and choice. The chemistry of attachment gives us the capacity to bond, but our behavior determines whether that bond deepens or decays. We are wired to love, but we must also practice it. Each act of giving, each moment of empathy, each gesture of understanding strengthens the neural and emotional circuits that keep two people intertwined. So, love is not static. It's alive, dynamic, constantly rewriting itself in the space between two people. And when both continue to give freely, attentively, without keeping score, the feedback loop becomes unbreakable. That is how love endures not by accident, but by generosity, renewed each day in the smallest of ways. Love, at its essence, is the most profound collaboration the human brain and heart ever undertake. It's not a mystery to be solved, nor a game to be won. It's a living system that thrives on reciprocity, empathy, and generosity. When partners approach intimacy not as performance, but as presence, not as obligation, but as choice, they step into the oldest and most beautiful rhythm of our species, the rhythm of connection. We are creatures built for bonding. Every act of tenderness, every shared laugh, every moment of mutual pleasure is an echo of that design. The science is clear. Love isn't just an emotion. It's an ecosystem sustained by giving. When we honor that truth, we move beyond mere attraction and into something lasting, something nourishing, something deeply human. Because in the end, love isn't about what we take from another person. It's about what we create together.